Good morning, everybody. We are live, and we are going on in Ma'amar Hechaltzu of the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, talking about a very deep understanding of how to love each other. And the last point that we made yesterday was the fact that we so inappropriately fixate on other people's negative qualities. And one of the things to consider, in the last point we made, and I repeated this in a class last night because
So you remember.
that also just because it was just so such a powerful and relevant idea, is the fact that we tend to look at personality flaws as a kind of like just the word, a flaw. In other words, like the default assumption is that everybody should be angelic. That's the default. They should be perfectly righteous and angelic. And then when we see a flaw, oh my God, can you believe that? You know, oh, that is really, repulsive, aberration, right? It's not an aberration. It's the default. And so the Rebbe here quoted that pasuk that I mentioned a real lot last night, and that is the fact that we were born a wild donkey. Okay. And, you're born a wild donkey. And then so you have 70 years in which to tame that donkey. Okay. And we saw that even implied in the pasuk when, I'm sorry.
I got 5 years.
Okay, well, you're doing pretty good. So when the pasuk says Yemei Shnotenu Bahem Shivim Shana, that the days of our lives Bahem in them are 70 years. So the Rebbe explained Bahem in them from the word Behema, animal. So we have 70 years in which to try to tame that wild donkey. That is us. And now he goes on. So we're right towards the, in the Hebrew, we're about halfway through the parak.
7 lines down.
Thank you. Where it says, "V'yeh shel letakena kol ke'achat." It's impossible to fix everything at once. It's we're wild donkeys. Little by little, we try to tame that donkey. Rak ma'at agershenu mipanecha. And then he quotes this pasuk. This is also this is just so rich and powerful. Hashem says concerning the Canaanite nations. Boy, there's so much here. We all want instant remedy.
Well, that's because of our society too.
Yeah, everything is now. We want everything instant. Instagram.
Right. 10 minutes.
Right, every 10 minutes.
10 minutes to get from.
How about seconds? Seconds.
No, 10 minutes when you're sending money through MoneyGram.
Yeah.
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
I want
It's easy to do
seconds.
Right now.
Right, I want
Yeah.
seconds. Okay. So that Hashem says to the Jewish people is unbelievable. He says, you're going to go into Eretz Israel. So redemption, going to conquer, liberate Eretz Israel. We're going to actualize the promise made by Hashem to Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov.
After 400 years.
So Hashem says, Ma'at agarshenu mipanecha. Ma'at. What's ma'at mean? Little. And it says it twice. Ma'at agarshenu
Yeah, little
mipanecha.
by little.
All those
Yeah.
Canaanite nations which are making you miserable.
Little.
Ma'at.
Oh,
Little by
I'll
little,
drive them
I'll
out.
kick them out.
Right.
Now,
that's right.
hey, I'm a busy man. Don't have time for little by little. I need now.
Oh,
Cockroach.
and there's a cockroach.
We'll kick him out little by little too. Okay. So, we want instant success. עד שבמשך זמן בריבוע עבודה בתפילה ובהתבוננות באלוקות בהתגברות המידות של הנפש האלוקית מחליש ומברר ומזכך את מידות טבעיים דנפש הבעמית. So he uses the metaphor, it's an amazing idea, of kicking out the Canaanite nations as a metaphor for kicking out our Yetzer Hara, all the bad impulse that we have within us. And Hashem says, ma'at, little by little. As a matter of fact, I hope I'm not making a mistake on this. Please correct me. What is the number of the Canaanite nations? 7. Thank you very much. So the 7 Canaanite nations represent, nothing is a coincidence. Why there's 7? Because when you look at the Sfirot, the 7 Sfirot, so, the Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Yesod, Malchut, right? 7 Sfirot. Each of those Sfirot, which they can either be the good version of those Sfirot or the bad version of those Sfirot, right? So Chesed is, love, right? Chesed, kindness, right? But you can have a twist, which is the bad version of that. It's sort of the fundamental midah, but coming from the side of impurity. The 7 Canaanite nations are the embodiment of the 7 impure expressions of the 7 Sfirot. Okay, so that's why 7, and we're going to kick them out, but ma'at, little by little. And how does one do that? This all ties in what we talked about last night. Especially next week, we're going to be focusing a lot on the Wednesday night shiur about how to change. About when we're talking about the role of davening, we'll start that next week. But ribui avodah batfilah, the multiplication of serving Hashem through davening. Davening is a very powerful, transformative way to get inside of us and work on those midot. But it only works if the hitbonenut belokut, if a person engages in hitbonenut from the word binah. What's binah mean? Understanding. It's got to be, actually, you're engaged. Right? Hitbonenut, meditative, contemplative, has to be contemplative davening, where be'elokut, you're actually, believe it or not, thinking about Hashem while you're davening. What a novel idea! I'm thinking about Hashem while I'm davening, instead of, I'm going to get my car fixed today, or I got a bill to pay, or whatever. Ubehit gabrut hamidot shel hanefesh elokit, and in that process, to strengthen the godly midot, right? The 7 positive expressions, right, of the godly soul. And through that, and through that, we're able to weaken and clarify and purify the natural animalistic expressions that are flowing from the animal soul, meaning the wild donkey. That is the default position of how we're born. And if a person does Oved Hashem, if he serves God, betach, for sure. Betach, the good expression of modern Hebrew, say a lot of words. Betach, for sure. Betach, you coming over? Betach, right? For sure. Yevarer v'yetakin l'tav. He will clarify and correct his attributes. So you look at another person, and you see defects. What are you supposed to say to yourself? You say, of course.
He's not perfect.
I was born a wild donkey. He's born a wild donkey. We're all working on ourselves. The fact that they're defects, okay. So he hasn't used up his 70 years, and I got to make it 120 because 70 is very young nowadays.
Yeah.
Right. Let me just finish the point here, and then I want to hear what you have to say, Elisha. Yeah. But the way he says, "Betach yevar v'takim yotov," like for sure, you have to have confidence. Like the person's working on it, each one in their own way, in their own complicated ways. But it's going to work out. And Bezrat Hashem, that person will improve and change, and I'm going to improve and change, and maybe worry about my own problems. Yeah. So I just want to see the word betach. Besides the fact that in modern Hebrew, it's a very common expression, and there's something very attractive, and also just for me, I'll have to discuss it with my therapist, Larry. Why of like cute expressions, right? They're very like bumper sticker kind of expressions. They're cute, and so part of me says, I don't like cute because it comes sort of like it's just too cute and trite. But on the other hand, sometimes these expressions they have such a truth to them. And the fact that it makes for a good bumper sticker, that's even actually good, because sometimes like it helps you because we always need to be so mindful. We need to be reminded of these things because it's so easy to be our donkey. So why am I telling you this introduction? Because there's an expression that I think is just such a powerful expression. You know, when it comes to there are these ways that work, right? That's what he's saying. Betach. If a person engages in contemplative davening, be'elokut, where they're actually thinking about Hashem, and they're performing the mitzvot, right? And they're learning Torah, it's going to work. But guess what? It only works if you work it. It only works if you work it, right? Hey, I'm on an amazing diet. I just don't do it. I actually am. But as an example, right? You know, there's so many things like I'm gonna do something, but if you don't do it, right? It only works if you work it. That's what he's saying here. If you work it, it's gonna work. Betach, for sure. Money back guarantee. If you work it, it works. Elisheva.
What I was gonna say is, it's fine to love people. It's fine to say I love you, whatever. But the thing of it is that you still have to be careful because this is a Pirkei Avot. Surround yourself with people of Torah. You have to be careful who you're talking to, where you are, and where you're living.
The main thing is here is idea is not to be judgmental and to keep your eyes on
you
yourself.
Still have to judge right and wrong and what you will and will not do. And you have to look at other people's behavior to see what you're going to do or not.
Okay, but I don't know if you saw. Do you get our weekly blast?
You don't.
I got it.
Why don't you share it with your significant other?
Yeah, because I don't get it.
Yeah, because I actually discussed this in this week's parsha because the mitzvah of rebuke is in this week's parsha. And so I quote the Baal Shem Tov who said an amazing thing because obviously people do have faults. And so the Baal Shem Tov said, you know, not to judge other people, but when you see a fault, what are you supposed to do? So he says it's a mirror. That Hashem put that person in your life to remind, and you notice something?
Irritate you because you need to work on it.
Because that same thing that you're seeing that's making you crazy, it's a mirror Hashem gave you to find it in yourself.
So you can take it in another way. So I meet drug addicts. I'm not a drug addict.
You are.
I am not. I've never taken drugs.
I'm joking, but we all are. We all.
No, we're not.
Oh, I don't want to push any wrong buttons here. You know, you're not a drug addict, but you know something? The essential personality trait that led that person, like we tend to say, oh, crack cocaine, man. I like there's nothing between me and them. Okay, there is in fact a little tiny attribute in that personality of that person that made him do that we have in us too.
Okay, so the point is like this, but the thing is maybe he needs me in his life so he'll get off his drugs.
Well, that's it. Yeah, but okay, that's also good, and both are true. Both are true, but it has to be with it won't work unless it's with love and not being judgmental. But I'll tell you one last thing on this point, and I see it's a little sensitive here, so don't beat me up, okay? You promise? Okay, so I'm going to tell you a true story for a change. So this is one of my most powerful stories. This story is just so not the most recent Lubavitcher Rebbe. No, it's the one before that. I'm pretty sure. No, the Frierdiker Rebbe. Right. So I believe it was Frierdiker Rebbe. So people would come to him. Nowadays people pay therapists. Back those days, you go to the Rebbe, okay? Or nowadays, if you have a Rebbe. So you go to the Rebbe, and he had like a waiting room. People would sit to wait to see the Rebbe, to have Yechidus, to have an appointment with the Rebbe. And one by one, they come in, talk to him, they leave. So this is a true story. A person came in, and then he left, and the Rebbe came out, and he looked like he'd been run over by a steamroller. The Rebbe is like sweat coming on his forehead. He looked incredibly. He told his Chassidim, "I want you to daven for me. I want you to say Tehillim, and I want you to fast." Everybody's like, "Oh!" Of course, the Rebbe asked it, so they're going to do it. And the next day someone said, Rebbe, what happened? So he explained the following. He said, how can I help somebody? A person comes to me and they have terrible problems. And a lot of times they're coming to me because they're wrestling with terrible sins. How do I give them advice? I give it because I look into my own soul and I see the same tendency in my own soul. Now, it's in a very small and very subtle level. The Rebbe doesn't act on it. That person's been captured by it. But the only way he can understand that person and to help that person is because he's able to find it in his own soul. Yesterday, he explained, someone came to me. They had done something so horrible. It was a sin so unimaginable. And I wanted to help him. I looked into my own neshama to try to find that horrible sin in myself. I looked and I looked and I looked. I couldn't find it. And that's why I'm upset. Daven for me. That's the story, right? And that's an unbelievable story, right? That even the Rebbe, the only way he can to understand and explain to other people, help them, is to find that same very subtle form of that same attribute in the other person. And the fact that he couldn't find it, that's what upset him, because he knows it's there. Because the only way to be able to be a whole person is through deep self-understanding. The fact that he couldn't get in touch with that, even the slightest element of what led that person to terrible sin, meaning that there was some aspect of his own personality that he couldn't link into, and that's what troubled him. That inability to tap into that self-understanding on such a deep level. Okay, how are we doing with time? We got time. Okay, let's read on. And sometimes, this is Elisha, your last point, in order to be able to work on our attributes and to be able to tame our wild donkey, we need help from somebody else. Because when we're left to our own devices and our own being totally wrapped up with ego, sometimes we're not able to see our defects. And therefore we need a friend. We need a friend who can help us to understand ourselves and to give us advice on how to be able to extract ourselves and grow from that particular bad attribute. And if a person loves another person truly, a true friend, yet the two people who are true friends, they can sit with each other and help each other grow, to give counsel and advice on each other, to work together to help each other grow. If a person doesn't do this, but rather they have a feeling of negation towards another person and of insulting the other person and lowering the other person, especially, God forbid, if a person relates to another person in the presence of other people in that kind of denigrating way, that's a reflection of incredible hatred. Of this hatred that person feels in his heart towards another person, an expression of the fact that that person has no goodwill towards the other person. We'll finish off the parak. And this reflects that person is not really worshiping God. Not really worshiping God. Even if you see somebody who's davening and learning Torah, if a person is hostile, denigrating, judgmental, even though they go through the motions of davening and Torah, it's not real. It's not flowing from the kind of humility, the kind of self-abnegation, bitul, v'chanat atzmuto, setting aside one's selfness. Rather, it's all expression. This is the perversion. His religiosity is an expression of his ego. Oh my God. God save us from ourselves.
So that's-
Have a good life, everybody. Bye.